talked about being in a emergency room because of an illness that he had.
He was sick. He was in an emergency room. He was far away from home.
He stood up and asked verbally if anyone was interested in talking about God or asking questions.
And that as he witnessed in this waiting room, he got discouraged.
As far as following God and expecting a payout, expecting a reward, and
how that actually brings into perspective things about life that pleasure cannot do at all.
What stuck out to me was Chris's comment at the very end of the chapter where he said, maybe we need to rethink what God is calling good and what we call good. And
I think everyone would like to know that there's a reason for suffering. I think one of the biggest disappointments of any human person is to come to the conclusion that suffering has no purpose.
You know, God seems to know what gifts we need in our lives and exactly when we need them.
You know, sometimes you can read a Bible passage and it's pretty clear what it means. Like John 11:35, for example, which says Jesus wept. So we can study this and we can interpret it, and at the end of the day, it pretty much means that Jesus wept. Or say the verse we looked at last week, Genesis 1:1, which says, in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. So it's pretty much God made everything. Then there's other verses that don't seem to make any sense at all, like Philippians 1:29, for example, where Paul writes, for it has been granted to you that for the sake of Christ you should not only believe in him, but also suffer for his sake. So what does Paul mean when he says it has been granted to us to suffer? Doesn't granted mean it's a gift? And in fact, it does. Granted carries with it this connotation of a gift given out of benevolence. So this great God who loves us enough to give us Jesus, the greatest gift of all, also loves us enough to give us the gift of suffering? But suffering doesn't seem like a gift. I mean, when I give my wife Anna a gift, I mean for it to make her happy. I want her to treasure the gift as something that's valuable and precious. But suffering doesn't seem to fit in the same category as a valuable treasure that's precious to someone. So either Paul, or I guess the Holy Spirit, is wrong, which I know is not the case, or my understanding of what a good gift actually looks like is wrong. So when Paul says, for those who love God, all things work together for good, what I'd really like it to say is all things except for suffering. But it doesn't say that. It says all things, which must include both good things and bad things, which are both part of all things. So I'm left wrestling with this concept that God gives us gifts of suffering, and he means them for our good because he loves us. And that's what this chapter is all about. It's about God, the great giver of gifts, teaching us to embrace both blessing and loss for the sake of Christ. So I hope you enjoy reading this chapter. And I hope that what you read will serve to deepen your affections for this great giver of all things, including suffering.